Greetings, everybody. My name is Clint McKinlay. I will be moderating this panel today, a panel on digital transformation. And I have special guests with me today, Julie Cabinaw and Curtis Call, who I will be formally introducing in a moment. Hello to the two of you. Thank you for being here. This panel today and Executive Roundtable conversation is sponsored by Rallyware, who is a leader in digital enablement and transformation. And as such, Rallyware has a vested interest in sponsoring conversations about digital enablement for distributed sales organizations. And we are grateful to our sponsor, Rallyware, for putting this together today. A little bit about your three people, the three of us that you will be hearing from today. I am a co-founder and partner in Halverson and McKinlay. We are a consulting company that focuses on growth and what we call revenue repair. Rallyware has asked me to be their host today for this executive roundtable. And our two panelists that are joining me are two people that I have great respect from. They are venerated leaders in the social selling world and in the world of business. First, we have Julie Cabinaw. Julie is the Vice President of Digital at Tastefully Simple, has emerged in the past several years as a thought leader. Curtis, I think I speak for a lot of us when I say, when I see Julie is speaking at an event, I get my tickets. She's an innovative thinker and has done some incredible things at her company and continues to lead out across the business as a thought leader. So Julie, welcome.
Thank you, Clint. Great to be here.
Awesome. And then we have Curtis Call, who I have known for more than a few years. A few interesting facts about Curtis. We're both deaf in one ear. So whenever I've gotten in a car with him, he has driven because our two good ears face each other. More than that, Curtis has been for well over the past 15 years or so, a leader in the social selling channel as the head of sales at various companies, also been a president of a social selling business. Today, he serves as Chief Sales Officer at Xyngular, where he has really made a mark in helping that company grow. And I guess in the past few years, Curtis, a lot of growth and continuing to lead out. So Curtis, great to see you again, my friend, and welcome.
Thank you, Clint. I only heard half of what you said, but it sounded really good.
Julie can fill us in at the end of the other half of our conversation. But great to see both of you here. We're super excited to dive into our topic today. Our topic is very timely. It is, I think, on the minds and lips of a lot of leaders in the social selling channel, in boardrooms, not just in boardrooms, but in the halls of the corporate office, and most definitely on the phones and in the conversations of members of sales organizations who are wondering a lot about this topic. So today we are going to talk about digital transformation. There will be other Rallyware panels in the future where we take a different angle at this topic. But for today, we're talking about the sales force. We're talking about enabling the sales force. We call this business model direct sales. There's a lot of other things it's called, but if you look at that name right there, we see that the sales force is essential to this business model. It's essential to all business models, but in direct sales, maybe a little more so, as we rely on our distributed all volunteer sales organizations to do the heavy lifting of new customer acquisition, retention, team building, all these important metrics. They come from a group of independent contractors, and it makes this business model unique and different. So as we talk about technology and enabling a sales force with technology, wow, what an interesting topic in the direct selling world. And that's why it's on everybody's mind. This is a business model that has made its stand with enabling independent entrepreneurs to have the personal touch, your direct selling neighbor that has sold something to you. That would probably describe every American. I think we've all basically been sold something by our direct selling neighbor, and probably multiple times. And some of these people become part of the network of our lives in terms of providing us with great products and services. Now, when you bring technology into the equation and you hear words like automation, and you hear words like, let's just take the heavy lifting out of this, sometimes there's worry that creeps into this conversation, in that we want to keep our business model functioning in a way that it has been known to function and in a way that we know it can succeed. So I guess the main question for the two of you as we start is, technology and the personal touch of networking. Are these two things friends or foes? So why don't I'll kick off the first question to Curtis. We talk a lot about personal relationships. How important is that power of the personal relationship in one-to-one selling? And, how important is this for us to preserve, even as we add technology aids?
Yeah, it's a great question, Clint. And I believe that relationship building is everything. It's sort of the backbone of our industry. It has been forever. I have the privilege of working for Rudy Revak, who's been in the industry 53 years, was recently recognized with a Lifetime Achievement Award by Direct Selling News. And he has pointed out over and over again across his 53 years, tools, technologies, things have changed. The way we've conducted the business has changed. But one thing that's never changed in that time period is that this is about relationships. And so I agree with him. I think it's everything. You asked the question, are they friend or foe, technology and the face-to-face business? And I wholeheartedly believe that they're friend, right? We see our lives colliding with technology everywhere. In everything we do nowadays, I get in my car to drive it and it's like I'm driving a computer down the freeway, right? Our lives are just so rich and surrounded with technology. And I believe in our industry, that's the same. But we have to continue to respect that we are in the relationship building business. We're in a people business. That's core and paramount to, the past, the present, and the future of network marketing.
Thank you, Curtis. No argument there. Certainly about the power of those relationships. Julie, in your role as head of digital at Tastefully Simple, you've got marketing responsibilities, very dialed into your sales organization as well. From your purview and perspective, what are the types of things that should stay done like person to person in the flesh, and what can be automated by technology?
Sure.
That question of what to automate versus not what to automate. Can you give us some thoughts on that?
Sure. So, I look at it as a set of concentric circles, right? We're all doing things that are, involve high touch or low touch, that involve skills we have and skills we don't have. And so when I look at that decision of what to automate, it comes down to how close to the core of who I am as a brand, or who I am as a seller, right? And that's what I want to stay personal. How knowledgeable am I in an area? That's where I can shine, right? So I think when we're deciding what to automate overall, it's best to look at those concentric circles and say, how do I keep the things that are closest to the relationships important? We're all in need of a village. The whole world has always relied on villages of people around us, and technology is changing that. So how do we enable the village of technology? And we look at it from a company perspective, the operational aspect of things like data collection, basic communication, how we're keeping track of maybe the products we have on hand, et cetera, as a seller. All of those are things that are really ripe for automation, because it's like having a virtual assistant, right? But I think we also have to keep in the back of our mind, the environment that we're in with direct selling, and how to use these tools to increase trust in direct selling would be another piece of what I would look, to support. So I don't want to be automating, first touch kind of outreach, right? I want that to be a human connection. I don't want to automate closing connections or, coaching as in like, say I work for a company that has great supplements and I need to know more about them. Like those are the opportunities to connect with people and provide value. So, I think those things, concentric circles, whether you have the skills or knowledge, and then how it supports high trust in the direct selling industry.
Interesting answer, Julie. So if I could try to summarize maybe from a different tack, it seems like the things that are the most essential in relationship building, which is the initial reach out, which is the close, which you said could be the training, Even though you can get training from great training from technology platforms, and even though technology can be automated to ping and tap people to reach out to them, the things that you're holding most sacrosanct here seem to be the where the superpower of the relationship exists. Don't mess with it. Just tee it up. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary, right? Because we've grown into a world of people that is sussing out what's coming at me that's real versus what's something that's automated. And so that's your chance to make a first impression, right? So
So true.
that's kind of the way I look at it.
I mean, when I get hit up with something on email or whatever, and I can tell it probably wasn't a human being that wrote that, it definitely hits different. Curtis, any comments on this as in terms of what to automate and whatnot?
I love Julie's visual of the concentric circles, so thank you for sharing that, Julie. I think she's spot on. Like, we want to automate things that point the partner, the distributor, the builder in the right direction into places where they can build the relationship. And we think often about, we can create tools that enable our field and help indicate to them activities they should be engaging in, things they should be doing. We can't create tools that replace them. If the end design were to find this thing that could replace them in the sales process, then you don't need them anymore. And we've undermined the idea that this is about our people and that this is a business that's giving people hope and opportunity. And so, for us, the lens that we look through often with technology is, does this tool, does this technology help them to do their job better or play their role better? Does it connect them better to their people? Does it help them to know which people to reach out to? Does it help them to know maybe a reminder of where they are in the sales cycle with a prospect? And it's kind of what I'm hearing Julie say is, you want to keep bringing them back to those conversations, back to those relationships. And the better that technology can do that, the more it's going to be a true enabler of our field. It's going to be able to help drive sales. I have a little formula I like to teach, and I just say, conversations lead to relationships, relationships lead to sales, right? And so we want to be driving as much as we can to teach people and point them to where they need to be having those conversations.
Well, that's an interesting segue to our next section, Curtis. Thank you for that great answer. As you think about conversations, right, which lead to relationships, you're starting to get into the realm of human behavior. And I think sometimes where I know this, that inside inside the leadership of sales organizations in our business model, we look at outcomes. We look at sales revenue, we look at the productivity or average productivity of an independent seller. We look at activity rates across the board. We look at decay curves. We look at various predictive indices to predict the future. But we get pretty obsessed sometimes with these outcomes because you might have an activity rate goal that you want to hit. Maybe it's north of 50%. I mean, you want to have sponsorship happening. Sponsorship is definitely an outcome. All of these things are outcomes that I'm describing, the things that wind up on our spreadsheets, and that sometimes even financial incentives are tied to these outcomes. And that's all fine and good if you work in the home office. However, there is a step that precedes that, where, Curtis, you were getting to this, which is the behavior itself, which often isn't talked about enough or celebrated enough. And there's a rush to the outcome. So let's linger here in the behavior land for a minute, because there's definitely a link to how technology perhaps ought to be stepping up in this area. So what are some of the most, I'll ask both of you this question. We'll start with you, Julie, and then we'll go to Curtis. Think about the sales force at Tastefully Simple. What behaviors, if there was a hierarchy of the most important things for them to do, the actual thing, not what we hope that generates, but the thing itself, what are those behaviors and what's most important in your point of view?
Sure. So, thinking like a marketer, not a martyr.
I hope not.
I think about the funnel, right? How are we teaching people to build awareness? How are we adding an interest, the desire, and the action? And so, at the awareness level, we're teaching them how to share the product, right? And so, I look at that, as being able to get the skills and confidence to share the product. Learning how to communicate effectively. I think there is so much nuance in communication that, some of us are very good at and some of us have more challenges with. I think of a story of, a consultant who came to me and said, like, I'm doing the prompts just like they were given in the app. How come it's not working? And it's the context that comes around that, right? It's like if you're talking to, Becky, and Becky, has two little kids that just started school and she's up to here, like, how are you, adjusting that, right? To take a technological, maybe given prompt, but turn that into something meaningful. So communication, active listening, and then diligent follow-up, right? How do you really build that idea of follow-up, and that, it might not be the first time, it might not be the sixth time. You're going to keep reaching out, and not all of your contacts are going to be about sales, right? It's going to be about building that connection, because if all they ever see of you is, on a social media platform saying, here's the latest special, you're not building a relationship,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, makes sense. So you're talking about reaching out, what kind of language they use, communication, how are they listening, how are they following up? Kind of hard for technology to do all of that effectively within the confines of a relationship. Curtis, what would you add to that, or what might be different in your neck of the woods?
I actually think that Julie hit the nail on the head, right? Like, and those are kind of, when I say conversations lead to relationships, there's initial conversations, there's follow-up conversations, there's closing conversations, there's onboarding there's all these things that we do as people in the direct selling space, and in your field has to be aware that there's a personal element to all of that. And technology can facilitate the passing of information. If I need to share a document or a video with you, technology can say, hey, Curtis, don't forget to follow up with Clint today. And it can help me in a lot of those ways. But those really are the key behaviors. One of the things that we've really been focusing on as a company as well is kind of segmenting your prospects and understanding, some people are just really interested in your product and they're likely just to become a product consumer for you. Others have demonstrated that they're very interested in your business opportunity, and maybe some straddle the line and they're not really sure. But we try to help them understand that you're going to go into those conversations a little bit differently. And so, one of the things for us as a behavior is an assessment of who am I talking to? What are they interested in? Sometimes it comes from the very thing that made me think to talk to you. Clint, you and I are catching up. We haven't talked for a few months, and you mentioned something about, hey, I really wish I had more of this or I had that. And I think, well, I have a product that does that, or via my opportunity, he could have that thing. And so now I kind of already have a sense of where to guide my conversations with you, because I think the challenge sometimes is not knowing what that person's looking for. I feel compelled to share it all. And in that oversharing, I have a tendency to maybe drive some people away. So that's just adding into what Julie said, is that segmentation piece, and teaching people to be good at that behavior as well.
Okay, very nice answers. Thank you. It's almost like your own internal CRM in a way of, who is this person? What do they care about? What do they value?
Yep.
And that's going to drive the piece of the huge story that you could tell, so we don't vomit on them, right? With too much information. So let's move to that. Curtis, you were kind of pushing us in the direction. Let's go there about technology and how it could help enable. I'll pause for a second to tell our listeners that if you have any questions that you want to submit on the chat, if I can work them in as we go through this content, I will endeavor to do so. So if you've got a burning question for Julie or Curtis, shoot it through the chat and I will do my best to acknowledge it. So let's transition here into how technology can be an enabler. We've talked about our business model. We've talked about crucial conversations and the need to keep those things human to human. But, already what's creeping into our conversation is all the way auxiliary ways that the scaffolding of technology can help make this happen more effectively. So let's move there. And the question I think for both of you is going to be, how do you envision technology best enabling the behaviors that you just mentioned in the best case scenario? What comes to my mind is things like smart alerts, AI suggested next actions, game theory, recognition, various rewards rooted in motivational psychology, um, personalization of the message, this whole idea of mobile first. This is sort of the playground that we're in now. These are some of the things, the buzzwords anyway, that you hear. You may care about some of those things more than others, or you may care about something totally different. I'll start with you, Julie. How do you envision it, like in the best case scenario, that you have the properly functioning scaffolding of technology to enable a sales force that still handles the person to person? How does that look for you, or in the best case scenario?
Sure. What you said, Curtis, in the last question really sparked a thought for me, was around this idea of assessment, right? And so I do think, and we'll get to maybe some of the other areas that you mentioned there, but I do think that idea of not everybody knows or feels comfortable with the right questions to ask to figure out what matters. And if you can have, your technology buddy, helping you a little bit with what's the next best question to ask you, I think that's an amazing use of tech enabling behaviors. And then, I just think about our volunteer sales force across the board, right? They have, many, and some are in it for a full-time gig, but we know our staff would share with us that many more are in for something a little bit smaller. And so they have these moments in between, right, where they have to prioritize the activities that they're going to take on to drive their business forward. And so if we can do things like smart alerts that can say, you know what, Jane is $50 away from her next promotion, right? You can bet I'm going to prioritize taking that, discussion with Jane, and using my time for that, because I know that's going to be low-hanging fruit, and it's an opportunity for me to build a personal relationship. Gamification, I think we have to be really careful about. It's been such a thing, right? Pervasive in our industry. And I think we can get to be too much of a good thing, because we want to make sure that we are enabling the outcomes and not just the badges. So that's why I think the power of pulling data together to drive actions that drive outcomes is really critical when we think about gamification. It's great to get a badge that maybe completed a training or did some of those things, but let's reserve those badges for things that will drive the business forward most of all.
Well, I like what you said about the technology helper or the tech BFF in your pocket. You mentioned predictive questions, lining up what question to do next. There might have to be there could be some machine learning there, depending on how those questions evolve, but also alerts, like kind of slam dunk easy things. Someone's near a promotion, like you said, or a qualification in their volume, just to be poked and reminded. So I'm hearing like the reminders, and I'm hearing the question generating, and a little bit of a watch out for you on expecting it to be too much, and making sure that the individual is really the one empowered to do it. Interesting. I like the questions there, because he or she who was asking the question seems to have the power in most conversations. And so if you're suggesting the next question, you're allowing the rep to be, prepared and confident going into the next follow-up. Curtis, anything you would add there?
I'm gonna just pick up on the question thing for a second. One of the old sales adages is, when you're selling, it's better to be interested than interesting, right? I'm not trying to make myself interesting. I'm trying to be interested in that person. And so Julie's advice around asking good questions shows I'm interested in that person. I'm interested in whatever outcome I can provide or improve in their life. And I think that's sound advice, that teaching your field to be good at asking questions is really key. She touched on a lot of things that I think technology can do really well for us. The reminders, the alerts, Clint, you just mentioned, like, hey, you're close to a rank or an achievement. Maybe it's to an incentive trip and you only have this far to go. And the things that can remind people, just bring it back to the forefront of their mind, are excellent uses of technology. One of the things I worry about a little bit is there really is not a technology out there that can do all the things we think technology can do for our field. You know, one company provides a great reminder service. One is really good on CRM. One is good at training modules and learning. And we have to be really careful that we don't try to grab it all and create such a large technology offering that we bury the brand new person under it. Leaders can figure it out because leaders are picking up pieces of technology little by little. Hey, the company rolled this out, and a few years later, they rolled that out. Next year, they rolled that out. And they kind of have a sense of all of it. But you take your brand new person who's just trying to get started, and you say, here's all this stuff you use, they're going to feel a sense of overwhelm. And what we know is that the overwhelmed new distributor doesn't take action because it doesn't appear simple enough. They're not sure how to use these things, and they back themselves up into, now I have to get in learning mode before I'm getting into activity mode. So I just think there's a caution there of, as you're building out your tech suite and all these tools that can do the many wonderful things we've talked about here, you have to be careful to understand that in your onboarding process, maybe it doesn't all have to be a part of it. Maybe there's one simple tool that new partner or distributor has to get plugged into to show them, hey, here's how we're going to help you get into activity. If you have a tool that prompts them to, hey, make your name list, and here's how you're going to reach out. And Julie talked about giving them the first words they need, word tracks to help them start their business. I think you have to be very careful in that regard, because we can come up with a lot of solutions that technology can provide. But if we build a massive stack, we can almost become counterintuitive. So, my counsel in all this is, yes, find them, get the technologies that are going to enable your field, and then learn where you insert that into sort of their life cycle with you in the business. I don't want to give a lot to my brand new people. As a matter of fact, the less, the better, in my opinion, to the brand new person. But at some point, hey, you've now got this team, you're starting to get people under you. Here's a technology to help you with X, and here's one for Y. And kind of add that, sort of line upon line, as we say, to that new person as they're figuring out how to build their business.
So in your best case scenario, Curtis, especially in the onboarding, it seems like you focus a little bit there, that the first steps of the new Salesforce member they're curated smartly, without the overwhelm, line upon line, as I believe you said, and giving it to them just in time, and knowing when that right time will be. And, frankly, that's a jumping off point to a conversation about AI and artificial intelligence and what's happening, not just across our world. AI has affected us all so much already, and has been for quite a while, just sort of quietly behind the scenes. And now, as it's become more democratized and more companies are coming forth with offerings, we're hearing a lot of different opinions about this type of technology from different people in the tech landscape. Some of them of whom are diametrically opposed, with similar influence and knowledge and money to do something about it. And so it's quite the debate. And as we think about our world of social selling, this conversation about empowering a new person and the caveats that Curtis has just laid down about not doing it too much, and what Julie mentioned about give me the next question at the right time and help me with the verbiage. Then we see the ears of AI creeping around the corner like, hey, I can help you with that, right? And it's like, well, wait a second, how can it? And what am I surrendering? It's exciting when you think about it, because a lot of what the two of you just described, some of that stuff's been around for a while, but it hasn't really worked in a way like clockwork to where it seems to understand what the representative needs. And it's able to crunch the data of people who bought this, bought that. They also bought this, and they bought it this far apart. Their decay curve looks like this. They're likely thinking this today. And I'm going to put all this into a boom. Here's your recommendation. And if we trust the machine to learn like that from internal data sets at your own companies, based on your data, as well as data from the quantum data from other places, which just fills in the blanks on human behavior generally, it's hard to not get excited, but it's hard to also not be a little bit worried as we step over this threshold. So I'll start with you, Julie, with as you think about artificial intelligence, as you think about machine learning and how it could fill in some of these blanks for direct sellers, what are you most concerned about and what are you most excited about? Like, give us through, like, are you more concerned or excited? And if so, what are the elements that make you one or the other?
You know, I am an early adopter of all things technology. And so I think I'm coming to a point where I'm coming back to a little bit of a cautionary point. And this is why. We have brains that have neural pathways that get formed by the actions we take, the things we say, the conversations we have, all those things, right? And I want to make sure that we still are using technology to reinforce what a human can accomplish. And so, this idea of, using an AI to substitute for you has, I have questions about weakening neural pathways and weakening skills and confidence, right? And so I would look at it, from that position of where are the areas that we really don't need to carry an encyclopedia in our head, right? Or, we don't need to have all of the information. So I'll give you an example of something that I did this morning, right? So I'm onboarding a new, person who's working on blogs. She writes a technically sound, perfect blog article, right? It has all the SEO keywords that I want in it. But guess what she didn't have? It was our spirit, right? In
Right.
what was written. And so I actually turned her loose a little bit on how we've trained ChatGPT to speak in our voice, right? So, our system of ChatGPT understands the prompts that I've given it before. I ask it to be an expert. I, want to give it as much context as possible when I'm giving prompts. I want it, encourage it to do thinking, and really, enabling that whole conversation. I was able to very quickly say, okay, here's the article you wrote. Now I'm going to run this through, this set of context that we've built and outcomes and article that now she can learn from a lot faster, right? Of saying, okay, I get the idea of tone of voice. So when you translate that into our sellers world, right? One of the tools that we have at Tastefully Simple has done a remarkable little tiny thing with AI that says, okay, there's this prompt for posting on social media, right? There's a generic prompt, which we know we want them to write something custom. And they've just added a little function that says, make it more formal, make it less formal, make it more friendly, make it, so it's given a very specific context in AI that I think is a beautiful way for our sellers to begin to experiment with AI to reflect who they are and how they want to connect.
So you're concerned about, it sounds like tone, like the flashpoint of some of your concerns is this a human being talking to me or not, or do I believe that? Great point. We just got a question from our audience here, and I want to go to it live and address it directly. And I think I'll stick with you, Julie, for this question, and I'll move to you, Curtis, on AI in a moment. The question comes from Dave Fleming, who
Hi, Dave.
who the two of you
Dave.
know. Let's just all have a moment for Dave Fleming. Hey, Dave.
We love Dave Fleming, so here we go.
So Dave is a well-known leader in our space, and he's asking this question, Julie: do you worry about the security of information when sharing proprietary info into an AI engine?
Absolutely. I'm not looking to share proprietary information at this point. I'd have to have a lot more confidence in whatever tool set I was using to be not being pushed back out. I mean, maybe that sounds a little old school right now, but when I'm thinking about using tools, I'm thinking about, using it to enhance something or to generate ideas, and not provide it with information that might be used by somebody else. That's my cautionary feeling.
So how do you deal with that then? Do you give the AI access to trends and to sort of faceless or but they also have to recommend, they may recommend reach out to Julie because Julie's primed for a second reach out without really knowing all of your stuff, just by seeing what you've done and matching it against behaviors of other customers and human behavior without giving up the goods on, Julie's social security number, this sort of thing. Interesting answer, Dave. I hope that helps a little bit. I think we'll let Curtis get to it as well. Great question, Dave. Thank you. I think it's on a lot of people's minds. So Curtis, as you think about AI, and you're think about a BFF in your pocket if you're a new rep who is very smart, who can kind of tell you who to talk to and when and why, and maybe even a few things you might want to say, given Julie's caveats about tone, and making sure we have the right human to human interaction. What gets you excited about all this? What gives you pause? Any comments for Dave Fleming? I just throw that to you, Curtis.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just add a little bit to Julie's response to Dave, we have a little bit of experience with this. As we've been using a tool that does exactly what you just described. Hey, follow up with this person. Here's their trend. Maybe they're about to fall out of the business, and here's something that you could go say or offer to them. But we've had to be very careful to create a database that AI engine gets to look at that doesn't carry any of that proprietary information, like you said, Clint. There's no social security numbers in there. There's no credit card number. There's nothing other than here's an account number with a name assigned to it. Mm-hmm. And this is and then we let it look at enough data to determine that behavior. But I think it's on us, it's on the human side to be careful about what we feed in to the engine, rather than just opening up a door and letting AI come after all of our data and all of the information that we hold as companies. I think that's really important. I heard a presentation probably 7 or 8 years ago at a DSA event where they were talking about AI, and back then it was really only in the context of sort of predictive analytics, right? That we could do the things we're talking about here, and that's kind of what led us into the technology we're currently using. And just really quick paraphrasing of the story. The guy who was presenting, and I forget who it was, but he told this story about how Las Vegas was using this predictive analytic information in their casinos. And so a person would sit down at a slot machine, they start playing, and they knew about when that person was going to get up and walk away. And when that person was about to get up and walk away, the machine printed out a coupon to go have dinner at the steakhouse right over there. So the person goes over and has dinner at the steakhouse. And of course, they get finished, and it's, hey, 20% off this nice place, go have a bite to eat. They get finished with their meal, their bill comes out, and on the bottom of their bill, it says, hey, here's $5 free for the slot machines. And they send them back to the slot machines because they know when they go back, they're going to sit down at a different machine. And there's this whole cycle that Vegas had been using for years. And it really caught my attention to say, okay, if they can tell when a person's about to stop playing, can I tell when a person's about to stop buying from me? Or can I better tell when a distributor is about to stop sponsoring? Can I tell when they're about to fall out of the activities that lead to growth in their business? And this was sort of, for me, the real birth of AI. Now it's advanced rapidly. And with Chat GPT and all these things out there, and so many things that it can do, it's fascinating and it's scary at the same time. I think we're still trying to wrap our heads around it, not just as an industry, like just as human beings. We're trying to fully understand the capacity of something like a Chat GPT, an AI model. But I think there's some real exciting elements here in terms of how it can help, back to the beginning of our conversation, automate some of the steps for the distributor. We have a couple of our leaders in the field that are really using this to their advantage right now. They're creating content for their social pages and using Chat GPT to write it. And like you, Julie, they're giving it a voice and they're telling it parameters. And I want this to sound a little more fun and playful. I want this is for my business, make it sound a little more businessy. But they're really jumping in and exploring. And I think AI is one of those things we're going to learn by doing. If we sit there and say, oh, I don't know this technology, and shelve it, it's probably not going to add any value, of course, but I think we have to be testing some things. And there's going to be an iterative approach to using AI and figuring out what helps us as companies. I can see a lot of uses on the corporate side, frankly, but also what ways can it help our partners in their businesses too. So it's an exciting time, Clint. I don't fully understand it myself. I would not sit here today and even pretend to be an expert in AI, because I'm not. but I've seen it do some really good things for our business, and I'm seeing it do some pretty fun things for our field as well.
Well, great answers. I can't remember a time where there was a technology that was so talked about and so little understood at the same time.
Right.
And I think we're the three of us at least are showing a humble side about this, that we really don't understand all the things. And the purpose for this seminar is not to unlock that, but rather to ask you what you're concerned about and excited about, what you both shared. It seems like a good combination of concern and excitement, and trying to find the middle way or the right way. So to get to that end, before we move on to our final topic, I'll ask you this last question about AI and about the advancement of this type of technology. What's the most important guiding principle for you, for your priorities at your company, when you consider tech enablement and associated investments, including AI? What's the most important guiding principle when you have a technology on the table that could do some of this for you? If you have a vendor who says something like, we can find the middle way for you, what principle, what thing has got to be true in your mind to move ahead with confidence in that kind of situation? Julie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that it has to be about trust. That has to be the guiding principle for what we're doing in tech overall. Like I said, it's, if we think about it being augmenting the human experience, like adding value to the human experience, then that still means that the human experience, at the core of it, trust has to be there. So I would be looking for companies to prove how they are using, the tools ethically, how they are protecting data and people using those, and how they are learning themselves from this rapidly evolving space, right? Rather than saying, hey, company, hey, seller, distributor, you're on your own. How are we going to navigate this together, and be winners together?
Well, thank you for that. I think, it's trust, like you said. You're thinking about what is your perspective partner learning, and are they humble about what they're learning? What about data privacy? And these all come down to trust. Very, very good watch outs there. Curtis, what would be on your mind with your company as you're looking in these types of investments, and you're kind of feeling the flutter of, oh my gosh, this is new and new technology, and part of you is like wanting to race ahead, and the other part of you is yeah, put on the brakes. What's going on from a principal standpoint at your company in these moments?
So one of the guiding things for Xyngular is what is right for the distributor, for the partner. And so, we're going to say, does this technology, doesn't matter what technology it is, but does this technology help or support them in their business? We would never go down the road of trying to replace. So support, help, enhance, enable, all these are great words. But we're not trying to get anything that lets us replace or lets them replace the actual work that needs to be done of building relationships. So that guiding principle is, does this support the partner, the field? Is this right for the field? And that's, I think, the lens we would look through in evaluating any technology.
Thank you for that. I see you have a field first focus at Xyngular.
100%.
Great to hear that. That leads to another question as we bring it all together here in the final section of the webinar today. And Julie, I'll start with you. You've been known as somebody who knows how to align with your field through ups and downs, through new iterations of your own business model. You've been progressive and you've been effective in working with fields and managing change. So let me ask you this question, given that background, Julie. How do you best align with field leadership when enacting digital priorities? How do you listen? In other words, another way to say that is, how do you listen and adapt to find the right kind of enthusiastic buy-in from the sales force?
Yeah. So, this all comes back to change management, right? When we're talking about this, where are they in being aware of the technology? Where's their desire? Where's their knowledge about the change, and are they ready to take action? Thinking about those four primary pieces, right? And so I think open dialogue is key. I tend to be extremely transparent with our field on the technologies that we're considering. We work with advisory groups, as I'm sure all of us on this call do, to help get them in the loop. But we listen to people across the spectrum, right? You're going to have people in different segments of your leadership and distributor base that are going to be in different mindsets around this adoption of technology. And so I think understanding their hearts and where they're coming from, because we all have the common goal of creating an amazing business opportunity and providing those opportunities for our field leaders. And so if you can connect what you're doing to what matters to them, and be humble about their observations and their experiences, right? I've seen companies get very defensive and say, "Oh, this is the way it's going to be." Hell, I think I've probably had those conversations or thoughts, right? Of, "Hey, we're doing something amazing for you," but you have to step back and put yourself in their shoes, and you have to teach them how to teach, because their leaders are looking to them, their field members, their team members are looking to them, and they don't want to look like it. They don't know what they're doing. So, they want to be able to learn that from you. So I want to be able to support them in, whether it was, creating crowdsourcing idea models, where I've been in the past, where we're asking for the input, to, rolling out a technology where, I'll give you a story. I won't name names, but, we had a consultant in our field that was kind of well known as not a fan of technology and very intimidated by it, scared by it. And we knew that there was, a program that we were going to be rolling out that some of these folks might find intimidating. So my whole goal and objective, and we achieved this, was to have her demoing that on stage. Because if she can demo that on stage, it doesn't matter if nerd Julie can demo it on stage, right? If she can demo it, I'm standing next to her, I'm there for moral support,
Right.
but she's experiencing that accomplishment, and everybody in that room, or whatever it might be, it's like, oh my gosh, if she can do it, I'm in. So, thinking about how you align is so important. And she was so proud too, right? Like, she was like, I did that, you did that. It's nice to boost that confidence.
Well, you definitely have a reputation for being collaborative. And Curtis, I think that's a power move. Get the person who's the least tech as known as loving tech, and have them be your demo partner. I'm taking that one home. Thanks, Julie. Curtis, maybe you can tell us, how do you go for the alignment and the buy-in with your leadership? You can't be too command and control, right? It's not like a regular company that way. And if you have a story of one of your leaders and how you've worked with him or her, do share. But we'll turn some time to you to answer that, Curtis.
Yeah, Clint, and this is going to come from learning a lesson the hard way. I think.
Is there any other way?
Yeah, I know. Like, why can't we just be handed golden lessons on a silver platter and move on? But it's got to start with technology the field wants, and I think sometimes that comes from just being in enough dialogue with them to understand what would help you in your business. What could we do that would bring the right enhancement to either your sales process, your learning process, the closing, buying, whatever. As a company, a few years back, we made a decision to launch a technology tool that we kind of developed internally, and we didn't ask their opinion. We just thought, this is so cool, they're going to love it. And, big fanfare launch, and then just watched it burn to the ground because they didn't want it. It wasn't something they felt like they needed. And we didn't include them in the process at all. And so, we backed up and we said, okay, what really went wrong there? Because in our minds, we still thought, no, that could have been really good for them. But we didn't ask if they wanted it. We didn't determine, it didn't come out of dialogue with them that said, hey, this is a spot where we could use some help and we're struggling. and we didn't bring them along. Julie just did a great job of describing the process of bringing them along and the importance of that. And we now take a much more intentional approach of, hey, at certain milestone phases along the way in technology development, we're going back at least to key leaders and saying, hey, this is where it's at, and this is how it's currently being developed. Are we still on track? Because one of the things we want to make sure we're doing is to say, hey, are we directionally correct? So are we moving toward the right technology? And then as we build it, is it getting built the right way? And that just comes from being in partnership with your field. So often I think organizations get wrapped up in, hey, there's the corporate entity and there's the field entity. And at the end of the day, we're just partnering together. We all have our roles. There's things we do to support, there's things they need to be doing. But if we can work closer together with our fields, I think we're going to land on those best solutions. And they're going to have buy-in because they were part of the process. They got to help select the technology we're going after. They got to have input along the way. And now here's this finished product, and they feel a sense of ownership for it. And now, of course, I have to, do the flex that Julie did and get my least, savvy technology person to present it on stage. And maybe even the person you might notice, hey, most of them are completely bought in. One still has reservations and questions. That could be a good candidate to present it on stage too, because sometimes in the teaching of it, they go, okay, yeah, that's really, really cool. We have a couple of leaders here that are really tech savvy. As a matter of fact, they've led us to some of the technologies that our whole field uses. And they were the ones that did the research and the homework and found it and, started using it themselves. And then all of a sudden everybody else is grabbing onto it. And then they're like, hey, corporate, how can you help? And so we've gone as far as even to do some report integrations that help feed information they need into that technology. But we didn't find it. We didn't develop it. And I think sometimes you have to be open to say, they're smart people. They're looking for ways to enhance their business too. And we don't have to believe we had all the right answers or that we are the only ones that knew vendors. And like that can
You're so right.
come from your partners in the business. And so just be open to those great conversations that lead you to the right solutions, and don't have any ego around who found it. Let's just find the right things that grow our business, and then we can move forward with it. So I think Clint, that's really what I wanted to add, is just simply be in dialogue with your field. It helps the entire process. And again, I learned it the hard way. Those are some valuable lessons.
Well, I think Julie and I have learned some things the hard way too, right, Julie? And then you develop these superpowers later when you get a little wiser. But again, it's about our business model, folks. This is not a command and control business. To a certain degree, it is with a home office. But once you start doing things with the field, that balance of power has got to be there. It doesn't mean that they wag the dog. It doesn't mean that every technology harebrained idea they have just gets adopted by the home office because they're a big leader and they want it and they might have a deal there. But I think it's a to your point, Curtis, a tremendous source of information, a wonderful opportunity. And if you're in that dialogue all the time anyway, getting their buy-in is like having another conversation that continuing a conversation rather than starting a new one in a hurry because you've got a deadline and you've got a convention you're going to launch technology X, Y, or Z. So I think we may leave it there because you both talked about your field. You both talked about how you work with them. You both talked about ways to include them and make them a part of this. And I want all of our listeners to know, in this 3-part series hosted by Rallyware, there is a reason why we started with sales and marketing leadership in our channel, because that is the flashpoint of what has to happen. It has to get done in the field for all mouths to be fed. And it can be thorny and difficult and emotional. And in conversations like this, allow us to get to the heart of the matter with some people who are very good at doing it. And in future conversations, we're going to talk with more technology and general leaders in direct selling. But today we wanted to start this conversation, this 3-part series, with some people that I know and that Rallyware knows, and that people that we are proud to be associated with as friends in our business model, because you bring a lot to the table. So thank you both. I have a feeling that in a few years, if we were to do this conversation again, we're going to have a different conversation about AI. It will have developed. It will be something that we're much more, I don't know if comfortable is the word, I hope so. But I think it will be something that is ingrained in a part of our lives. And I will remember the things that the two of you said, and I hope that our listeners do as well. So let's just give you one last chance, your final comments as you look at the conversation today. What are some of your biggest, if you have a takeaway from this conversation that you've shared that you would want to leave with our audience, those who will watch it on replay, to summarize your view, maybe your company's perspective on the proper role of technology in Salesforce enablement. Julie, we'll start with you for a final comment.
Sure. I think I've said it a couple of times, and not to be a broken record, but technology with trust, using technology from a place of trust to build trust and grow relationships for our businesses is really that central point for me. And I love sort of what you said about, you know, the ideas from the field, right? That's been one of my biggest learnings along the way. I worked in tech before I got into this industry, so I thought the only thing I did was build, right? And learning, oh my God, there's great solutions out there. And when they're already loved by the field, the momentum can just pick up, but hopefully they have good solutions that are right for the organization, of course. So thanks for the opportunity, Clint.
Thank you, Julie. Always fun to see you and talk to you. Curtis, what's your final comment?
I have two takeaways. First is that Julie Cabinaw is brilliant. Thank you, Julie, for your content here today. I have notes written down here, some great things you said, and really look forward to furthering our relationship as well. I think for me, Clint, the other big thing is don't shy away from technology. We've acknowledged here today that it has a lot of great uses, a lot of ways to enable and help support the field, support the company, and companies have to be willing to innovate. And I think that we have to be willing to try new things, and we have to be willing to grab at technologies that can support us. Technology, if we just look in our lifetimes alone, has moved at a rapid pace. And it seems like every decade that's gone by, the rate of change and new things that come out in technology is increasing. You said, hey, we look forward 2 years from now, we might think differently about AI. I'm like, what about in 6 months? It's going to be so different,
True.
So just, my advice to anyone listening is be willing to try, and, be willing to innovate and be willing to grab technologies that are good, because there's going to be a lot of great ones out there. And we just need to keep finding those that are most capable of helping our field. So, and Clint, thank you for being a great host as well. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, Curtis, I heard at
Likewise.
least half of what you said, so that you can take that to the bank. Great comments. What a great treat this has been to sit with a couple of true thought leaders. Thank you both very much for your time. You're both, you have a lot of demands on it. So thank you for that. Thank you to Rallyware, George Elfond and his team for sponsoring this great event. We look forward to more of these Rallyware sponsored executive roundtables coming in the months ahead. There will be one in October and one in November, and those announcements will be made on LinkedIn with topics and guests. So stay tuned for that. Curtis, Julie, thank you both. Have a great week. Lots of love to you, and may your companies continue to win.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody.